Sarah Martinez had built her empire from nothing. At 38, she was the youngest female CEO of a major hospital chain in the country. Her days were filled with board meetings, financial reports, and strategic decisions that affected thousands of employees and patients. She wore her success like armor, sharp suits and confident strides through marble hallways where everyone knew her name. But success came with a price. Sarah's marriage had crumbled under the weight of her ambition 3 years ago. Her ex-husband had taken their 2 children to live across the country, leaving her with visitation rights in a hollow penthouse apartment. She told herself the sacrifice was worth it, that she was changing healthcare for the better. Yet some nights when the city lights twinkled below her floor-to-ceiling windows, she wondered if she had lost more than she had gained. On this particular Tuesday morning, Sarah was reviewing quarterly reports when her assistant knocked on her office door. "Ms. Martinez, there's been an incident at our downtown emergency room." "The local news is already there." Sarah's stomach tightened. Bad publicity could destroy months of careful reputation management. "What kind of incident?" "A patient complaint about wait times. The family is claiming negligence. Channel 7 wants a statement." Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed her coat. She had learned long ago that the best way to handle a crisis was to face it head-on. The downtown hospital was one of their busiest locations, serving a diverse community where every decision carried weight. As her driver navigated through traffic, Sarah mentally prepared her talking points and damage control strategy. The emergency room buzzed with its usual chaos when she arrived. Nurses moved quickly between curtained areas, monitors beeped steadily, and the waiting room held the familiar mixture of worry and impatience that she had seen countless times during her rise through the ranks. Sarah had started as a hospital administrator 15 years ago, working her way up through sheer determination and an ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. She spotted the news crew immediately, their camera focused on a man sitting in the corner of the waiting room. He was probably in his early 30s, wearing a wrinkled work shirt with a name tag that read Marcus. His calloused hands suggested manual labor, and his face carried the exhaustion that came from too many long days and sleepless nights. Beside him sat a girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, her small frame dwarfed by the plastic waiting room chair. Sarah approached the news reporter first, extending her professional smile and introducing herself. But as she listened to the complaint, her attention kept drifting to the father and daughter. The man, Marcus, wasn't yelling or demanding attention like many upset families did. Instead, he sat quietly, occasionally checking his phone or whispering something to his daughter that made her nod seriously. "We've been here for 4 hours," Marcus explained when the reporter thrust the microphone toward him. "My daughter Emma has been running a fever for 2 days, and today she started having trouble breathing. I brought her here because I trust this hospital, but we're still waiting to see a doctor." The little girl, Emma, leaned against her father's shoulder. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the child's flushed cheeks and the way she seemed to struggle with each breath. Something about the scene made Sarah's chest tighten with an emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel at work. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Marcus continued, his voice steady but tired. "I just want someone to help my daughter. She's all I have." The reporter asked about his insurance, and Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "We have coverage through my job at the construction company. It's not the best plan, but it should be enough for basic care." Sarah found herself studying Marcus more closely. There was something about his quiet dignity that commanded respect. He didn't seem angry, just worried sick about his child. She noticed how he kept one protective hand on Emma's back, how he had positioned himself between her and the bustling activity of the emergency room. As the CEO, Sarah knew the statistics by heart. Emergency rooms were overcrowded, understaffed, and operating under impossible pressures. Triage protocols meant that the sickest patients were seen first, but that sometimes left families like Marcus and Emma waiting for hours. It was a system that saved lives overall, but it was far from perfect for individual cases. The news interview wrapped up, and Sarah watched as the crew prepared to leave. She could have simply provided her standard statement about reviewing protocols and ensuring quality care. Her public relations training kicked in, offering her a dozen ways to deflect responsibility while appearing concerned. But something stopped her. Instead of leaving, Sarah found herself walking toward Marcus and Emma. Up close, she could see that Emma's breathing was indeed labored, and the child's eyes had a glassy quality that suggested illness. Marcus looked up as she approached, his expression wary but polite. "I'm Sarah Martinez, the CEO of this hospital chain," she said, crouching down to Emma's eye level. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Emma," the girl whispered, her voice hoarse. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. This child reminded her of her own daughter at that age, vulnerable and trusting. "How are you feeling, Emma?" "My chest hurts when I breathe," Emma said simply. Sarah looked up at Marcus, who was watching the interaction carefully. "How long has she been like this?" "The fever started Sunday night," Marcus explained. "I thought it was just a cold at first, but this morning she could barely walk to the kitchen without getting winded. That's when I knew I had to bring her in." Something in his tone made Sarah realize this wasn't a case of an overprotective parent rushing to the emergency room for minor symptoms. Marcus had the weathered look of someone who dealt with problems on his own, who only asked for help when he absolutely had to. If he had brought Emma here, it was because he was genuinely frightened. Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. "Let me see what I can do about getting Emma seen sooner." As she walked toward the triage desk, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in a window. For the first time in months, she looked like more than just a CEO in an expensive suit. She looked like someone who remembered why she had gotten into healthcare in the first place. Sarah's conversation with the triage nurse revealed what she had suspected. Emma's case had been classified as urgent but not critical, placing her behind several more severe cases. The system was working as designed, but Sarah could see that Emma's condition was worsening as they waited. "Dr. Peterson is our best pediatric emergency physician today," the nurse explained. "He should be able to see Emma within the next hour." An hour felt like an eternity when Sarah looked back at the exhausted father and his struggling daughter. She found herself making another unprecedented decision. "I'm going to wait with them." The nurse looked surprised. "Ma'am, you don't need to do that. We'll take good care of them." "I know you will," Sarah replied. "But I want to stay." She returned to Marcus and Emma, pulling up a chair beside them. Marcus seemed puzzled by her continued presence, but Emma managed a small smile when Sarah sat down. "Do you like stories?" Sarah asked Emma, who nodded weakly. "What's your favorite kind?" "Princess stories," Emma whispered. "But not the boring ones where they just wait to be rescued." "I like the ones where they save themselves." Sarah smiled genuinely for the first time in days. "Those are my favorite kind too." As they waited, Sarah found herself drawn into conversation with Marcus. She learned that he worked for a small construction company, often pulling double shifts to make ends meet as a single father. Emma's mother had left when the girl was just 2 years old, unable to handle the responsibilities of parenthood. "It's been just the two of us ever since," Marcus explained quietly, stroking Emma's hair as she dozed against his shoulder. "She's the smartest kid in her second grade class, wants to be a doctor when she grows up." "What happened to her mother?" Sarah asked gently. Marcus's expression tightened slightly. "Jennifer was young when Emma was born. Really young. She had dreams of traveling, becoming an actress, living a different kind of life. When Emma was diagnosed with asthma as a toddler, and the medical bills started piling up, Jennifer couldn't handle it. She said she never signed up to be tied down by a sick kid." Sarah felt a flash of anger toward a woman she had never met. That must have been incredibly difficult. "It was," Marcus admitted. "But honestly, Emma and I are better off without someone who would abandon their child. Emma doesn't remember much about her mother, and I've tried to fill both roles as best I can." Sarah watched Marcus's face as he spoke about his daughter. There was no bitterness in his voice when he mentioned his ex-partner, only a fierce protectiveness when he looked at Emma. She realized she was witnessing a kind of love she had rarely seen, the selfless devotion of a parent who had sacrificed everything for their child's well-being. "What about your family?" Sarah asked. "Do you have support?" Marcus shook his head. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 22. Jennifer's family never wanted anything to do with Emma after she left. It's just been me and Emma against the world." The words hit Sarah harder than she expected. Here was a man who had been dealt some of life's cruelest cards, yet he radiated a strength and dignity that put her own struggles into perspective. She thought about her own children, living with their father across the country, and felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. "You're doing an amazing job," she said quietly. Marcus looked surprised by the compliment. "Some days I'm not so sure. I work so much just to keep us afloat. Emma spends a lot of time at after-school care or with our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. I worry that she's missing out on things other kids have." "What kind of things?" Dance classes, soccer teams, birthday parties at fancy places. All the stuff that costs money we don't have. Marcus paused, watching Emma sleep. Last month she asked me why we never go on vacation like her friend Sarah from school. I didn't know how to explain that her friend's family has 2 parents with good jobs, while we're still paying off medical bills from her last asthma attack. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. She had spent so much time focused on building her empire, on proving herself in boardrooms and at conferences, that she had forgotten about families like Marcus and Emma. Her hospital served thousands of people like them every day, but she had become disconnected from their reality. "Emma's lucky to have you," Sarah said firmly. "Love and stability matter more than dance classes or fancy vacations." Marcus smiled sadly. "I tell myself that, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. She deserves so much more than I can give her." As if summoned by her father's words, Emma stirred and opened her eyes. She looked around the waiting room with the confused disorientation of someone waking up in an unfamiliar place. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Marcus asked immediately. "Tired," Emma whispered, "and my chest still hurts." Sarah noticed that Emma's breathing seemed more labored than before. The child's lips had a slightly bluish tinge that hadn't been there an hour ago. Her own limited medical training from her early days in hospital administration kicked in, and she felt a surge of alarm. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I think we need to get Emma seen right now." Before Marcus could respond, Emma suddenly sat up straighter, gasping for air. Her eyes widened with fear as she struggled to catch her breath. Marcus immediately moved to support her, his own panic barely controlled. "Emma, look at me," he said firmly but gently. "We're going to help you breathe better, okay? Just like we practiced at home." Sarah watched in amazement as Marcus guided his daughter through a breathing technique, clearly something they had done many times before. Even in his obvious terror, he remained calm for Emma's sake. But Sarah could see that this episode was worse than what they were used to managing at home. Without hesitation, Sarah stood and walked quickly to the triage desk. "We need Dr. Peterson now," she said with the authority that came naturally after years of leadership. "The little girl in the waiting room is having significant respiratory distress." The nurse looked up, saw Sarah's expression, and immediately pressed a button to call for assistance. Within minutes, a medical team was surrounding Emma, who was now clearly struggling to breathe despite Marcus's coaching. As they wheeled Emma toward an examination room, Marcus grabbed Sarah's hand. "Thank you," he said simply, but his eyes conveyed a depth of gratitude that words couldn't capture. Sarah squeezed his hand in return, feeling more connected to her purpose than she had in years. The next hour blurred together in a whirlwind of medical activity. Sarah found herself pacing the hallway outside Emma's room, something she had never done for a patient who wasn't family. Through the partially open door, she could hear the steady beeping of monitors and the quiet murmur of medical professionals doing their work. Marcus sat in a chair beside Emma's bed, holding her small hand while she wore an oxygen mask. The child's color had improved dramatically once she started receiving proper treatment. But Sarah could see the exhaustion in both father and daughter. Dr. Peterson, a kind-faced man in his 50s, emerged from the room and approached Sarah. "Are you family?" he asked gently. "No, I'm Sarah Martinez, the CEO. I was here when Emma's condition worsened." "How is she?" Dr. Peterson glanced back toward the room. "She's stable now. It was a severe asthma attack triggered by what appears to be a respiratory infection. We've got her on nebulizer treatments and antibiotics. She should be able to go home tomorrow if she continues to improve." Relief flooded through Sarah. That's wonderful news. The father mentioned they don't have a regular pediatrician. Dr. Peterson continued. "Emma needs consistent asthma management, not just emergency treatment when things get bad. Without proper preventive care, attacks like this will keep happening." Sarah nodded, understanding the implication. "What would proper care look like?" "Regular checkups, proper inhalers, maybe seeing a pediatric pulmonologist for a comprehensive asthma action plan. The problem is many families can't afford the ongoing care. They end up in the emergency room when it becomes life-threatening." "How much would it cost for Emma to have everything she needs?" Dr. Peterson looked surprised by the direct question. "For comprehensive asthma care, including specialist medications and regular follow-ups, probably a few $1,000s a year depending on her insurance coverage." Sarah made a mental note as Dr. Peterson returned to his other patients. A few $1,000s was nothing to her, but she knew it represented months of Marcus's salary. She thought about her own children, who had access to the best healthcare money could buy, and felt a familiar tightness in her chest. She pushed open the door to Emma's room quietly. Marcus looked up as she entered, his face showing the strain of the last few hours. "How are you holding up?" Sarah asked. "Better now that she's breathing easier," Marcus replied, his voice hoarse from stress. "Dr. Peterson says she can probably go home tomorrow." "That's great news." Sarah pulled a chair up beside Marcus. "Can I ask you something? Why did you choose this hospital? There are other emergency rooms closer to where you live." Marcus was quiet for a moment, his thumb gently stroking Emma's hand. "About a year ago, Emma had a really bad attack in the middle of the night. I didn't know what to do, so I brought her here. There was this nurse, Maria, who stayed with us the whole time. She taught me breathing techniques to help Emma, showed me warning signs to watch for. She even gave me her personal phone number in case I had questions." Sarah felt something warm spread through her chest. This was exactly the kind of care she had envisioned when she first got into hospital administration. "Maria made us feel like we mattered," Marcus continued. "Like Emma wasn't just another poor kid with Medicaid. When your daughter is scared and can't breathe, having someone treat you with dignity makes all the difference." "Is Maria working today?" "No, she works nights mostly. But every nurse and doctor here has been kind to us. That's why I didn't mind waiting. I knew Emma would get good care when it was our turn." Sarah felt ashamed of her earlier frustration with the wait time. Marcus had never complained about the system, only expressed concern for his daughter. His trust in the hospital and its staff was absolute, even when they were struggling. Emma stirred and opened her eyes, looking much brighter than she had hours earlier. "Daddy?" she whispered. "I'm right here, sweetheart. How do you feel?" "Better. The mask helps me breathe." Emma noticed Sarah sitting nearby. "Are you still here?" "I wanted to make sure you were okay," Sarah said, surprising herself with how true that statement was. "Daddy says you're the boss of the whole hospital." Sarah smiled. "Something like that. What do you think of our hospital?" Emma considered this seriously. "Everyone is really nice. The doctor let me listen to my own heartbeat with his stethoscope. And the nurse gave me stickers. Do you still want to be a doctor when you grow up?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Yes! I want to help kids who have trouble breathing like me. Daddy says if I study really hard, I can do anything I want." Sarah glanced at Marcus, who was looking at his daughter with pure adoration. "Your daddy is absolutely right. But it costs a lot of money to become a doctor," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Daddy says we have to save up for college." The innocent comment hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Here was an 8-year-old who already understood the financial barriers between her and her dreams. Sarah thought about her own children, who had trust funds and college savings accounts that would ensure they never had to worry about such limitations. "Emma," Sarah said carefully, "what's your favorite subject in school?" "Science. And reading. My teacher says I'm reading at a 5th grade level already." "That's incredible. What kinds of books do you like?" "Books about space and animals and how the human body works. Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor, sometimes takes me to the library when Daddy is working late." Sarah felt her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. This child had dreams as vast as any privileged kid, but she was already learning to temper them with harsh reality. Meanwhile, her father worked himself to exhaustion to provide basic necessities, let alone dreams. "You know what, Emma?" Sarah said impulsively. "I think you're going to make an amazing doctor someday." Emma beamed, but Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Miss Martinez, you don't have to say things like that. Emma understands that not all dreams are realistic for families like ours." "Why shouldn't they be realistic?" Sarah asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Marcus looked surprised by her intensity. "Because dreams don't pay for medical school, or even for the inhalers Emma needs to stay healthy." The stark honesty of his statement silenced Sarah. She realized that while she had been building a business empire, families like Marcus and Emma were making impossible choices every day between dreams and survival. Emma's potential was being limited not by her intelligence or determination, but by circumstances completely beyond her control. As visiting hours ended and Sarah prepared to leave, Emma called out to her, "Ms. Martinez, thank you for staying with us today. It made me feel less scared." Sarah walked back to Emma's bedside and gently squeezed the child's hand. "You're very brave, Emma. Don't ever let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big." As Sarah left the hospital that evening, she couldn't shake the image of Marcus and Emma from her mind. Something fundamental had shifted during those hours in the emergency room, and she knew there was no going back to business as usual. Sarah couldn't focus on work the next morning. She kept thinking about Emma's bright eyes and Marcus's quiet strength. Instead of diving into her usual morning reports, she found herself researching pediatric asthma care and the barriers that prevented families from accessing proper treatment. The statistics were staggering. Children from low-income families were 3 times more likely to be hospitalized for asthma attacks because they couldn't afford preventive care. Many parents, like Marcus, worked multiple jobs but still couldn't afford the specialists and medications their children needed. It was a vicious cycle that kept families trapped in crisis mode. Around noon, Sarah made a decision that surprised even her assistant. She canceled her afternoon meetings and drove back to the hospital. She told herself she was just checking on a patient, but deep down she knew it was more than that. She found Marcus in the pediatric ward sitting beside Emma's bed while she colored in a hospital activity book. Emma looked much better, her breathing steady and her cheeks pink with health instead of fever. "Ms. Martinez," Emma called out when she saw her. "Look what I drew." The picture showed a stick figure in a white coat with a stethoscope, standing beside a smaller figure. "That's me when I'm a doctor," Emma explained proudly. "And that's my first patient." "It's beautiful," Sarah said sincerely. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better. Dr. Peterson says I can go home this afternoon if I keep breathing good." Marcus looked tired but relieved. "We're just waiting for the discharge paperwork and her medication instructions." Sarah noticed a small pile of papers on Marcus's bedside table, medical bills and insurance forms. Even with coverage, she knew the family would be facing significant out-of-pocket costs. "Marcus, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" Sarah asked. They stepped into the hallway where Marcus immediately looked concerned. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all. I wanted to talk to you about Emma's ongoing care. Dr. Peterson mentioned she should see a pediatric pulmonologist regularly." Marcus's shoulders sagged slightly. "I know. He gave me a referral, but the specialist he recommended doesn't take our insurance. The ones who do have waiting lists that are months long. What if I could help you find someone sooner?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Martinez, I appreciate everything you've already done, but I can't accept charity. Emma and we've always taken care of ourselves." Sarah felt a flash of frustration, but she forced herself to think about why Marcus might feel this way. His pride wasn't arrogance. It was survival. He had learned that depending on others could lead to disappointment or worse. "This isn't charity," Sarah said carefully. "Our hospital has relationships with several pediatric specialists. Let me make some calls and see what we can arrange." Marcus studied her face for a long moment.
"Why are you doing this?"
"You don't even know us." The question caught Sarah off guard. Why was she doing this? She could tell herself it was good business, good public relations, or simple human decency. But the truth was more complicated. "Because Emma reminds me that there's more to healthcare than profit margins and efficiency metrics," Sarah said honestly. "I got into this business to help people, and somewhere along the way I lost sight of what that actually means." Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you can help us get connected with better care for Emma, I want to find a way to pay it back somehow. Focus on being Emma's father. That's enough." When they returned to the room, Emma was showing her artwork to a young nurse who was genuinely admiring her work. The scene reminded Sarah of something Marcus had said about feeling valued and respected by the hospital staff. "Emma," Sarah said, "your dad mentioned you go to the library sometimes. Do you like to read about science?" "I love it. Mrs. Rodriguez got me a library card and I've read almost all the kids' books about the human body. What do you want to learn about next?" Emma's face lit up. "How hearts work, and why some people need surgery on their hearts. There was this book about a little boy who had heart surgery, and now he can run and play like other kids." Sarah felt an idea forming. "Would you like to meet a real heart doctor?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Really, a real one? I know several pediatric cardiologists. Maybe we could arrange for you to visit their office, see what they do." Marcus looked skeptical. "Ms. Martinez, you really don't need to do all this. Actually, I think our doctors would enjoy meeting Emma. It's good for them to remember why they became doctors in the first place." Over the next hour, as they waited for Emma's discharge, Sarah found herself learning more about their daily life. Marcus worked for a small construction company owned by a man named Tony, who had been flexible about time off when Emma was sick. But Marcus never took advantage of this kindness, often working extra hours to make up for any time he missed. Emma attended a public elementary school where her teacher, Mrs. Chen, had recognized her academic potential and was already talking about advanced placement programs. But the girl would need tutoring and enrichment activities to stay competitive with students from more affluent districts. She does her homework at the kitchen table every night, Marcus explained. I'm not much help with the advanced stuff she's learning, but I make sure she has a quiet place to work. Sarah thought about her own children, who had private tutors, fully equipped home offices, and every educational advantage money could buy. Yet she rarely saw them, while Marcus made Emma's education a priority despite working long hours and having limited resources. When Dr. Peterson arrived with Emma's discharge instructions, he pulled Sarah aside. I'm glad you're taking an interest in this case, he said quietly. Emma's asthma is manageable with proper care, but without it, we'll keep seeing her in crisis situations. What would ideal care look like? A pediatric pulmonologist to develop a comprehensive management plan, regular checkups, proper medications including a good preventive inhaler, and an action plan for the school. Most importantly, education for both Emma and her father about recognizing warning signs before they become emergencies. And the cost? Dr. Peterson shrugged. The initial specialist consultation and testing might run a few $100s even with insurance. The medications could be $50 to $100 a month depending on what's prescribed, but compare that to what an emergency room visit costs. Sarah made mental calculations. What seemed like a modest amount to her represented a significant portion of Marcus's monthly income. No wonder families delayed care until situations became critical. As Emma gathered her coloring books and Marcus signed the discharge papers, Sarah made another impulsive decision. Marcus, I'd like to stay in touch if that's okay, to see how Emma's doing with her new treatment plan. Marcus looked surprised but pleased. I'd like that. Emma would too. Sarah pulled out her business card and wrote her personal cell phone number on the back. Call me if you have any problems with the specialist referrals or if Emma has any issues. As she watched Marcus help Emma into a wheelchair for the ride to the hospital exit, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with quarterly profits or board presentations. For the first time in months, she was excited about going to work the next day, because she had a plan that went far beyond business metrics. Emma waved goodbye from the wheelchair, clutching her drawings and a small teddy bear that one of the nurses had given her. Thank you for being my friend, Ms. Martinez. The simple words hit Sarah harder than any business accolade ever had. As she walked back through the hospital corridors, she began to see everything differently. These weren't just profit centers and efficiency statistics. They were places where real families faced their worst fears and deepest hopes. 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself thinking about Marcus and Emma every day. She had kept her promise to help connect them with better health care, pulling strings to get Emma an appointment with Dr. Rachel Kim, one of the city's top pediatric pulmonologists. The specialist had been impressed with Emma's intelligence and Marcus's dedication to her care. Sarah was reviewing patient satisfaction surveys in her office when her assistant buzzed in. Ms. Martinez, there's a Marcus Rivera here to see you. He says you know him? Sarah's heart skipped. Please send him in immediately. Marcus appeared in her doorway looking uncomfortable in the formal business setting. He wore clean work clothes and held an envelope in his calloused hands. Marcus, how's Emma? Is everything okay? She's doing great, Marcus said, his face breaking into a smile. Dr. Kim gave us a whole new treatment plan, and Emma hasn't had any breathing problems since we started the new inhaler. I wanted to thank you and give you this. He handed her the envelope with visible nervousness. Inside, Sarah found a hand-drawn card from Emma, showing the two of them standing together in the hospital. Below the drawing, in careful second-grade handwriting, Emma had written, "Thank you for helping me breathe better and for believing in my dreams. Love, Emma." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. This is beautiful. How's she doing in school? Really well. Her teacher wants to recommend her for the gifted program next year. Marcus paused, looking around Sarah's impressive office. Actually, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Of course, sit down. Marcus perched on the edge of a leather chair, clearly out of his element. Emma keeps asking when she can see you again. She talks about you all the time, calls you her hospital friend. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to come to dinner sometime. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs at our apartment. Emma would love to show you her science project. The invitation caught Sarah completely off guard. When was the last time someone had invited her to a simple family dinner? Her social life consisted of business events and charity galas, not kitchen table meals with 8-year-olds. I would love that, she said sincerely. Marcus looked relieved. Great. How about Saturday evening? Around 6? Perfect. Can I bring anything? Just yourself. Emma's already planning to show you her rock collection and her library books about space. After Marcus left, Sarah sat in her office feeling lighter than she had in months. She realized she was genuinely excited about Saturday in a way she hadn't been excited about a social event in years. Saturday evening, Sarah found herself in a part of the city she rarely visited, climbing the stairs to a third-floor apartment in an older but well-maintained building. She could hear Emma's excited voice through the door before she even knocked. The apartment was small but spotlessly clean, and filled with warmth. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator, and bookshelves made from boards and bricks held an impressive collection of library books. A small dining table was set for 3 with mismatched dishes and a mason jar full of wildflowers as a centerpiece. Ms. Martinez, you came! Emma launched herself into Sarah's arms, and Sarah was surprised by how natural it felt to hug the child back. I wouldn't have missed it. What smells so good? Daddy made his famous spaghetti sauce. It has a secret ingredient, but he won't tell me what it is. Marcus emerged from the tiny kitchen wearing an apron over his work clothes. The secret ingredient is love, he said with a grin, causing Emma to roll her eyes dramatically. That's what he always says, but I think it's really oregano. During dinner, Sarah found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Emma chattered about school, her friends, and her latest discoveries at the library. Marcus shared stories from his construction work, including funny mishaps and the satisfaction of building something lasting. The conversation was easy and genuine, without the careful politeness of her usual social interactions. After dinner, Emma proudly gave Sarah a tour of their small home. Her bedroom was tiny but organized, with a small desk where she did homework and shelves holding her growing collection of science books. Above her bed, she had taped up pictures she'd drawn of various careers: doctor, astronaut, teacher, scientist. I change my mind about what I want to be sometimes, Emma explained, but I always want to help people. That's a wonderful goal, Sarah said. You know, there are lots of ways to help people. Doctors and nurses help people get better, but so do teachers and scientists and even people who run hospitals. Is that how you help people? The innocent question made Sarah pause. How did she help people? She made sure hospitals ran efficiently and profitably, but she had lost touch with the human impact of those decisions. I try to, she said honestly, but spending time with you and your dad has reminded me that I could probably do better. As the evening wound down, Emma showed Sarah her science project about the human respiratory system. The 8-year-old had created a detailed diagram showing how asthma affects breathing, clearly inspired by her own experience. My teacher says I might win the science fair, Emma said proudly. And if I do, I get to go to the regional competition in the state capital. Sarah examined Emma's project more closely. The work was remarkably sophisticated for a second grader, showing not just artistic talent but genuine scientific understanding. This is incredible, Emma. You really understand how the lungs work. Dr. Kim explained it to me during my appointment. She even let me listen to my own lungs with her stethoscope so I could hear the difference between when my airways are clear and when they're tight. Marcus beamed with pride as he watched his daughter explain her project. She's been working on it every night after homework. Mrs. Rodriguez helped her with some of the bigger words. Tell me about Mrs. Rodriguez, Sarah said, settling into the worn but comfortable couch. She's our neighbor, Emma said, curling up beside Sarah. She's really old but really smart. She used to be a teacher in Mexico before she came here. She helps me practice reading sometimes when Daddy has to work late. Marcus nodded. Mrs. Rodriguez has been a godsend. She refuses to let me pay her for watching Emma. Says it keeps her young. Without her, I don't know how we'd manage. Sarah felt a pang thinking about her own children, who were cared for by expensive nannies and attended exclusive private schools. Yet Emma, with her elderly neighbor's help and her father's dedication, seemed happier and more grounded than Sarah's own kids had ever been. Emma, Sarah said carefully. Your dad mentioned that your teacher wants to recommend you for the gifted program. How do you feel about that? Emma's expression grew serious, excited but scared. The gifted kids get to do special projects and go on extra field trips. But Daddy says it might cost money we don't have for supplies and trips. Sarah glanced at Marcus, who looked uncomfortable. We'll figure it out, he said quietly. Emma's education is the most important thing. What kind of costs are we talking about? Sarah asked. Nothing huge, Marcus replied. Maybe a couple $100 for the year for special materials, field trips to science museums, that kind of thing. It's not that we can't afford it, but it means being even more careful with other expenses. Sarah bit back her immediate impulse to offer financial help. She was beginning to understand that Marcus's pride wasn't just stubbornness. It was self-respect earned through years of taking care of his family without handouts. As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself sharing stories from her own childhood, something she rarely did anymore. She told Emma about her first job at a hospital, how nervous she had been, and how she had slowly learned that healthcare was about much more than business. Were you scared when you first became the boss of a hospital? Emma asked. Terrified, Sarah admitted. I was afraid I would make mistakes that could hurt people. But you learned how to do it right? I'm still learning, Sarah said, realizing how true that was. Every day I learned something new about how to help people better. When it was time for Emma to get ready for bed, she hugged Sarah tightly. Will you come back and visit us again? I'd love to, Sarah said, surprised by how much she meant it. As Marcus walked Sarah to the door, he seemed to struggle with something he wanted to say. Sarah, he said finally, using her first name for the first time, I want you to know that what you did for Emma, getting her connected with Dr. Kim and everything, it changed our lives. But more than that, you treated us like we mattered. Like Emma's dreams were worth taking seriously. They are worth taking seriously, Sarah said firmly. Emma is exceptional, Marcus. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Sometimes I worry that I'm not enough for her, that she needs more than I can give. Sarah looked back toward the apartment where she could hear Emma singing softly to herself as she got ready for bed. Marcus, that little girl adores you. She feels safe and loved and valued. She's confident enough to dream big because you've taught her that she's worth big dreams. That's not something money can buy. As Sarah drove home to her empty penthouse, she thought about the warmth of Marcus and Emma's small apartment. She had spent the evening feeling more like herself than she had in years. For the first time, she was beginning to understand the difference between being successful and being fulfilled. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. She had been thinking about Emma's science fair and the gifted program, and an idea was beginning to form. It wasn't about charity or writing checks. It was about creating something bigger, something that could help not just Emma but other bright kids facing similar barriers. She called her assistant and asked her to set up a meeting with the hospital's foundation board. Sarah Martinez was about to propose something that would surprise everyone, including herself. 2 months later, Sarah stood before the hospital foundation board, her presentation complete. She had just outlined her proposal for the Emma Rivera Educational Fund, a scholarship program for children of hospital patients who showed academic promise but faced financial barriers. The fund would provide educational support, including supplies for gifted programs, tutoring, college preparation, and mentorship opportunities, Sarah explained. We would start with 10 children per year, partnering with local schools to identify candidates. Board member Dr. Williams leaned forward. This is quite a departure from our usual medical research funding. What inspired this initiative? Sarah thought about Emma's bright eyes and Marcus's quiet determination. I've learned that healthcare extends beyond treating immediate medical needs. When we help a child like Emma Rivera reach her full potential, we're potentially training the next generation of healthcare providers and researchers. The board voted unanimously to approve the fund, with initial financing of $500,000. But Sarah's real excitement came from knowing that Emma would be the program's first recipient. That afternoon, Sarah drove to Emma's school for the science fair. She found Marcus standing proudly beside Emma's display, which had grown even more impressive since Sarah had seen it at their apartment. Emma wore her best dress and had carefully braided her hair for the occasion. Ms. Martinez, you came. Emma rushed over, beaming with excitement. I wouldn't miss this for anything. Your project looks amazing. Emma had expanded her respiratory system model to include information about asthma triggers, treatment options, and prevention strategies. She had also added a section about her own experience, written in her careful handwriting. Having asthma taught me that our bodies are amazing and complicated. I want to become a doctor so I can help other kids breathe easier and chase their dreams. The judges were clearly impressed by Emma's presentation. She explained complex medical concepts with the enthusiasm of someone who had lived through them, answered questions with confidence, and showed genuine passion for her subject. When the winners were announced, Emma took first place in the second grade division. As she accepted her blue ribbon, Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. Marcus noticed and handed her a tissue, his own eyes bright with emotion. "She did it," he whispered. "She certainly did," Sarah replied. "And this is just the beginning." After the ceremony, Sarah asked if she could speak with Marcus and Emma privately. They found a quiet corner of the school cafeteria, where Emma was still clutching her blue ribbon. "I have some news to share with both of you," Sarah began. "Our hospital foundation is starting a new scholarship program, and Emma, we'd like you to be our first recipient." Marcus looked confused. "What kind of scholarship?" "It's called the Emma Rivera Educational Fund," Sarah said, watching their faces. "It will provide financial support for educational opportunities, supplies, tutoring, field trips, and eventually college preparation for children who show academic promise." Emma's eyes went wide. "There's a fund named after me?" "There is, because you inspired it." Marcus was shaking his head. "Sarah, we can't accept this. It's too much." "Actually, you can't refuse it," Sarah said with a smile. "It's not charity, it's an investment. We believe Emma has the potential to make significant contributions to healthcare someday, and we want to help her get there." "But why?" Marcus asked, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah looked at Emma, who was staring at her ribbon with wonder, then back at Marcus. "Because a little girl taught me what healthcare really means. It's not about profit margins or efficiency statistics. It's about believing in people's potential and giving them the tools to reach it." Emma suddenly looked up with a serious expression. "Does this mean I can really become a doctor?" "Emma," Sarah said, kneeling down to the child's eye level, "you can become anything you want to be. This scholarship will help, but your intelligence, your compassion, and your determination are what will get you there." Emma threw her arms around Sarah's neck. "Thank you for believing in me." Over the following months, Sarah watched Emma flourish in the gifted program. The scholarship covered not just the costs Marcus had worried about, but also provided Emma with a mentor, Dr. Kim, who met with her monthly to discuss science and medicine. Emma's grades remained outstanding and her confidence grew visibly, but it was Marcus who surprised Sarah the most. He had initially resisted the help, but gradually came to understand that accepting support for Emma's education wasn't weakness. It was smart parenting. He began attending parent meetings for the gifted program, advocating for Emma and other children with the same quiet determination he brought to everything else. 6 months after that first meeting in the emergency room, Sarah found herself back in the same waiting room, but this time she wasn't there for a crisis. Emma had asked if she could visit the hospital where her friend Ms. Martinez worked, wanting to see where doctors and nurses helped people get better. Sarah gave Emma a personal tour, introducing her to doctors, nurses, and technicians. Emma asked thoughtful questions about equipment, procedures, and what different medical professionals did. In the pediatric ward, she handed out drawings she had made for young patients, her natural empathy shining through. "She's remarkable," Dr. Peterson told Sarah as they watched Emma gently talk to a frightened 5-year-old who was about to have surgery. "That child has a gift for connecting with people." Marcus stood beside them, watching his daughter with obvious pride. "She wants to help everyone she meets. Sometimes I think she gets that from her mother, but then I remember that Jennifer couldn't handle helping even one person." "She gets it from you," Sarah said firmly. "You taught her that caring for others matters." As their tour ended, Emma turned to Sarah with a thoughtful expression. "Ms. Martinez, when I become a doctor, I want to work at this hospital. Is that okay?" Sarah felt her heart full to bursting. "I think this hospital would be very lucky to have you, Dr. Emma." "Dr. Emma?" the little girl repeated, trying out the title. "I like how that sounds." That evening, Sarah returned to her penthouse apartment, but it no longer felt empty. She had photos of Emma's science fair victory on her desk, artwork on her refrigerator, and a sense of purpose that extended far beyond quarterly reports. She thought about the call she had received that morning from her own children, who lived across the country with their father. For the first time in months, she had been able to tell them stories about her work that had nothing to do with meetings or numbers. She told them about a brave little girl named Emma, who wanted to become a doctor, and how sometimes the most important part of being successful was using that success to help others reach their potential. Her daughter had asked, "Mom, do you think you could help kids like Emma where we live too?" The question had planted a seed that Sarah knew would grow into something bigger. The Emma Rivera Educational Fund was just the beginning. As Sarah stood at her window looking out at the city lights, she realized that a chance encounter in an emergency room had changed her life as much as it had changed Emma's. She had rediscovered the heart of healthcare and remembered why she had chosen this path in the first place. Tomorrow, she would call her ex-husband about visiting her children. She would propose expanding the scholarship fund to other hospitals in the chain, and she would continue to be Emma's hospital friend, watching a remarkable little girl grow into the doctor she was destined to become. But tonight, she simply felt grateful for the gift Emma and Marcus had given her. The reminder that the most meaningful success came not from what you achieved for yourself, but from what you made possible for others.